Good afternoon, welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Dodger Stadium, home of the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Petco Park, home of the San Diego Padres, are just over 120 miles apart, but they're actually closer than it seems when you consider their Catholic heritage. Both cities represent an immense sacrifice and an immense heritage that's rooted in the early Franciscan missionaries. As the two teams square off in the playoffs, we look at their Catholic connection with Christian Clifford. Christian is an educator and author who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area with his bride and son. And for more information, you can visit his work at missions1769.com. Christian, great to speak with you. How are you?
Hi, Dr. Peters. I'm fine, thank you.
So, Christian, where in the Bay Area do you live?
I'm on the San Francisco Peninsula in San Mateo, and I actually teach at a high school named after the founder of the California missions, Junipero Serra.
Right. Well, so I know exactly where both those are. I used to teach at Marin Catholic, and I lived in San Mateo.
Oh, okay. Very good. Very good. I actually teach with Mr. Peralta, Ken Peralta. I don't know if you know him. He used to be the football coach at Marin Catholic.
Oh, okay. The name rings a bell now. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, so I love that you try to reclaim the Catholic heritage between these two football teams and their cities. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those things that we take for granted, that the Franciscans actually had a tremendously powerful founding influence in everything that we know about California today.
They sure did. So 1769 to around 1821, the Spanish Franciscan missionaries founded 21 missions and converted about 30,000 plus California Indians. And it was only not a majority of the state they didn't encounter. It was just a small portion, actually, from San Diego all the way up to Sonoma County, north of San Francisco, and probably about 30 to 40 miles inland from the coast. So, you know, we're talking about maybe 10% of the land mass in California. Yeah.
And so we're looking at, like 120 miles in between, but as we mentioned earlier, this was a pilgrimage journey, so to speak, for people like Father Junipero Serra and his cohort.
Yeah, actually I did all 21 California missions, 800 miles from San Diego to Sonoma, but these guys did it as part of their life. Father Garces, who is a Franciscan, mainly connected with the history in Arizona, but he actually came to Mission San Gabriel on an exploration expedition to go to the Central Valley, and he was the first European to go there. But before doing that, he was at Mission San Gabriel, and he connected with now St. Junipero Serra, and they walked together from, it's about 15 miles, Mission San Gabriel, from downtown Los Angeles today, all the way to San Diego. So there's a nice little Spanish colonial connection to the city of Los Angeles, or City of Angels, and San Diego, both place names that were given to them by, of course, their Catholic references, but by the Catholic missionaries. And
another important thing to highlight here is it's not like they made those trips via ship or even via automobile. They walked. All of this was on foot, and a big part of that, like you mentioned, was a part of their life and part of their missionary zeal.
That's right. That's right. Junipero Serra is notorious for walking, but they did take ships. But on this trip, they did not. They did not.
So, of these eventual 21 California missions and the heritage that they've built, they formed ostensibly the culture that was at the height and prosperity of California.
Yeah, so they brought agrarian ranching, which there were, of course, negative outcomes because the natives were hunter-gatherers, and the cattle would eat their acorns and things of that nature. That was their sustenance before. So their diets changed. Of course, this disease that was brought was rampant, and they could not do much with the medical knowledge they had at the time. They were unaware of what was going on. But the Spanish culture did stick because eventually Mexico would come in, and they were first a part of New Spain, so a very similar culture. And that ensued with the vaqueros or cowboys in that culture, the California culture, and then of course the U.S. came in 1846 around that time, and then eventual statehood in 1850.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about Junipero Serra and Father Garces and the like, it's so easy to brand them with modern narratives of them being colonists, right? White supremacists who came in and usurped the prevalent culture and inserted their own culture. But the truth is, what they brought was the great heritage of Christendom that brought about not only a greater understanding and dignity of human life, but also ways of life that brought about true flourishing for the locals.
Yeah, that's kind of where the debate is centered, is just how flourishing and so on. My kind of apostolate of mission1769.com was really a reaction to a question that a student asked before the canonization back in 2015, the canonization of Junipero Serra. Because young people are getting these claims online, social media, making these very egregious claims about Junipero Serra. And he's kind of become the poster boy of everything that was negative about colonialism. Yep. But the evidence really does show that he was a great defender and voice for the natives who, in many circles in Spain and eventually Mexico, were seen as less than. It was more a us versus them mentality rather than the both and. So he's really trying to preach the kingdom of God and to build up, to take those walls down, and to see the human dignity of the other rather than how they looked, their status, their history, and so on.
One thing to also consider that I think a lot of people take for granted is that Archbishop Cordileone, your Archbishop in San Francisco, I have tremendous respect for the man. He highlights the fact that Junipero Serra made heroic sacrifices in the interest of protecting and upholding the dignity of the local indigenous people of California, especially from their Spanish conquerors. So that means against his fellow Spaniards, he stood up for the local indigenous people and against soldiers in terms of standing up for their dignity as human persons. Yes, there's great evidence for that. Some initial things that come to mind are, one, he was a Franciscan, he took a vow of poverty, but he was living a pretty comfortable life back in Mallorca, and at the old age of 50, he said, I think God's actually calling me not to be a theology and philosophy professor, but to go to the New World and to evangelize to those who never heard the gospel and to spread God's kingdom. But the complexity gets difficult because it was a part of the state too. I mean, they had to be financed somehow. And eventually, actually, Catholic lay people in the pews would donate to the Pious Fund to ensure these things happened. And there's kind of more of a distance from the crown and its treasury. But yeah, I mean, he went at great sacrifice. One, just by going to New Spain, and then of course when he was here, he was bitten by an insect of some sort. Right. And it inflamed his foot off and on, his leg, for the rest of his life. So it didn't stop him. In 1769, he encountered his first natives that never heard the gospel before. He was on foot in Baja California, and he knew God was calling him to this. And then eventually he founds the first 9 of the 21 missions as Father President. And, the rest is history. He had great expense. He walked most of the places, like I said earlier, but he loved and saw the natives as children of God, and he was their spiritual father. At his death, Father Francisco Palau, his confrerie, he founded Mission Dolores, for example. His good friend, he was a student of his back in Mallorca. He followed his teacher here, and these guys knew they would never return home. He said, he described the funeral of Sarah, the time of mourning, so beautifully in his writing. So we have to stop here, Christian, but thank you so much for making the time. My guest, Christian Clifford, educator and author who lives in the San Francisco Bay Area, and we've been talking about, well, essentially the Catholic heritage of California. Stay tuned. I'm Mark Speeter.